Hello everybody. Hope you all are doing well today. Today's lesson is a little bit different. It's not going to be straight from Eureka Math because I thought we might need more than one day to work on the skills of classifying quadrilaterals. Now, in order to do this lesson with me or to go over this with me, what I'm going to need you to do is number one, I need you to watch the Math Antics video and the cool song about classifying quadrilaterals. When you watch Math Antics, you can stop at about 6 minutes or so because it starts to go on and talk about things that we're not really going to cover, but you're welcome to watch the whole thing if you want. What we're going to be doing though in the next, or today and tomorrow, is really talking about how do you classify quadrilaterals. And it might sound kind of funny. What does that mean to classify quadrilaterals? Well, last week we classified triangles. That means we looked at their side lengths and we looked at their angles, and that was how we gave those specific triangles special names. We're going to do the same thing today with quadrilaterals. Now, the cool thing about quadrilaterals is that they can be made of any closed four-sided shape. So you can kind of get creative when you're making quadrilaterals. A quadrilateral is any closed shape. That means it's all sides are connected and it has four sides. Now, of course, what we're going to be doing is talking about some of the most common ones. So we're going to fill in this chart, which means, or leads me to the second thing I'm going to need you to have. I'm going to need you to have asked your parents to print this page as well as this one. These are the two that we're going to go over today. If you don't have a printer, don't worry. What I want you to do is I want you to open up your math journal and I want you to copy this into your math journal. All right? When you're done with this page and the next page, if you have your math journal, I want you to glue these two pages into your math journal. So you need to have that as a record. All right. Well, what we're going to do here is we're just going to make ourselves a quadrilaterals chart. And when I look at this, it makes me kind of think about my family tree. Have you ever seen one of those? It shows usually your grandparents and then their two kids and then their kids and then their kids. Well, that's kind of how I feel that this quadrilateral chart is. It's sort of like a family tree. And at the top of this family tree, we have a shape which has 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. So we know it's a quadrilateral, and it has no parallel sides. Now remember, we talked about parallel sides a couple weeks ago, and we talked about how parallel lines are never, ever, ever going to intersect. Now it might look like this line and this line are parallel, but they're not, because if this line continues on and this line continues on, they're going to eventually converge or intersect. Same with these. If this side continues on and this side continues on, they're going to intersect. So this is a quadrilateral with no parallel sides, and so the only name that we can give it is just quadrilateral. So let's write that in. And we can remember, and something that's really kind of cool that helps us is we can think about what this word really means. I love word meanings. I think they're so helpful in math. But the word quad, I'm going to write this up here, actually means four. Think about quadruplets. And quadrilateral, well, lateral means sides. So if we're to break down that word, quad means four, lateral means sides. So we would just call any shape that has four sides a quadrilateral. This one doesn't get any other name because it has no parallel sides. Now, let's take a look at this shape to the left. On this shape, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look for parallel sides. And remember when we drew in Eureka Math, we drew those little arrows going the same direction? Well, whenever we have two of those, we call them a pair, kind of like you have a pair of shoes that go together. These two lines together are a pair. And this one has just one pair of parallel sides. In fact, if you kept these sides going up, they would definitely intersect. So the name for the quadrilateral that has only one pair of parallel sides is called a trapezoid. So let's go ahead and let's label this one. Well, a trapezoid kind of ends right there. It doesn't have any other special type of trapezoid that we can make with it. There are other trapezoids that we can draw. I could draw one right here. Sometimes we see trapezoids drawn like this. And if we were to see a trapezoid drawn like this, I could tell that this one has those two pairs of, or it has one pair of parallel sides, two sides that are parallel to each other, and one right angle. And this type of trapezoid we would call a right trapezoid. That gets really specific. You don't have to worry about that too much. I just want you to know that trapezoids have only one pair of parallel sides. That's the important thing to know about them. Trapezoids are quadrilaterals. They're in the family, but they have one pair of parallel sides. But we've got some other types of quadrilaterals. This is a cool thing about quadrilaterals. We can make them really different. This particular quadrilateral has two pairs of parallel sides. In fact, I'm going to do the Eureka thing here, and I'm going to put two little arrows on these sides showing that they're a pair. And I'm going to just keep the one arrow here and here showing that these are a pair. When you have a quadrilateral that has two pairs of parallel sides, we call it a parallelogram. So let's write that in. All right, if you are copying this in your journal, feel free to push pause at any time so that you can take a second to copy it and you don't have to feel left behind. All right, so let's go back and review what we have so far. Quadrilaterals, kind of like the great grandpa here at the top of the tree. It's over all of these, sort of like an umbrella. Every one of these is a quadrilateral. A quadrilateral with one pair of parallel sides is a trapezoid. A quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides is a parallelogram. Now, parallelograms can also be specialized. We can have a parallelogram, which is the quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides that happens to have four right angles or equal angles. And I'm going to add right here, instead of putting equal angles, what I'm going to write is, I'm going to erase that word equal, and I'm going to write right, four right angles, which is the same thing as equal angles. And I'm going to draw those in. So this shape, which I'm sure at this point you recognize because you've known it ever since you were a little kid, this shape we call a rectangle. And a rectangle is a quadrilateral that's a parallelogram that has four right angles. So a rectangle is a very special type of parallelogram. It's a very special type of quadrilateral because it has to have two pairs of parallel lines and four right angles. This parallelogram only has two pairs of parallel sides. It doesn't have any right angles. That's what makes a rectangle special. It's a special kind of parallelogram. There's another type of parallelogram too. You can see that this one looks a lot like this one, except it has equal side lengths. It also has two pairs of parallel sides. Let me fix my rectangle here. I didn't do that. I can see one pair, two pairs, except this one has equal sides. And we call this one a rhombus. So a rhombus is also a parallelogram because it has two pairs of parallel sides and it has all equal sides. A rhombus is not a rectangle. And that reason is because a rhombus doesn't have those 4 right angles. Now, there's something that can be both a rhombus and a rectangle. Have you guessed it by now? It's a square. You're exactly right. So let's look down. The square is the most special kind of quadrilateral that there is. And that's because the square is also a rhombus. A square is also a parallelogram. And a square is a quadrilateral. That's pretty cool, isn't it? A square is a rectangle. It's a special kind of rectangle. It's a parallelogram, and it's a quadrilateral. So I can tell that the square is all of the things that are above it. The square is not connected to the trapezoid, so the square is only going to be also able to be called by the names that are above it. Let's go ahead and let's mark up your squares. So I'm going to make sure I can see that the square has 2 pairs of parallel lines. It has 4 right angles, and it has all equal sides. And that is what makes it a square. This can be a little bit confusing sometimes. I hope you've watched the song about quadrilaterals. If you're into that kind of thing, sometimes music helps you to remember different math concepts. So I hope that you listen to that. I thought it was kind of cool. But I love this picture because it lets us see something like this. It can help me see a trapezoid is just a special quadrilateral with 1 pair of parallel sides. It helps me see that a parallelogram is a quadrilateral that has 2 pairs of parallel sides. It can help me see that a rhombus is a parallelogram that has all equal sides. It can help me see that a rectangle is a parallelogram that has 4 right angles. And finally, a square here at the bottom is everything above it. A square is a special kind of rhombus, it's a special kind of rectangle, it's a special kind of parallelogram, and of course, because it's under the word quadrilateral, it's a quadrilateral. All right, now, keep this somewhere handy because now we're going to pull out the second sheet that we're working on today. Remember, these are going in your journal when you're done. Okay, so in this sheet, what it's asking us to do is it's asking us to check each box that applies. There may be multiple right answers because more than one term may apply to each quadrilateral. For example, a square is also technically a parallelogram. So let's look. Let's think about why did they classify the square as a square, a quadrilateral, and a parallelogram? Well, let's go ahead and mark the parallel sides and the right angles in the square. This is the first thing that you always want to do. You always want to see what lines and angles do our figures have. And guys, it's never too early to start doing this. My second grader is working on shapes. Some of your second grade brothers and sisters might be doing that too. And I had my daughter do this last week. So I can see that this is a square, of course, but it's not just a square, it's also a quadrilateral, and it's a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel sides and it has 4 sides. It is not a trapezoid though, because a trapezoid only has 1 pair of parallel sides. All right, let's look at shape number 2. And let's see if we can first identify any right angles. Let's see. All right, I've got 2 of them. These 2 are not. This one's definitely acute, and this one's obtuse. And let me look for some parallel lines. I see one here, and I see one here. All right, let's go and let's look at our options. Triangle, definitely not. Trapezoid, cha-ching, it is a trapezoid because it has 4 sides, and 2 of those lines, or 1 pair, are parallel. So this shape is both a trapezoid and a quadrilateral. It's not a rhombus because remember, a rhombus, and this is where it's good to have your other chart, a rhombus has to have 4 equal sides and this one does not. Okay, number 3. I want you to take a second and look at it. Let's see if we can identify any right angles. Let's see. Say them with me. Acute, acute, obtuse, acute. Nope, no right angles. Any parallel sides? Nope. Wow. So that means that this shape can't be a parallelogram because it doesn't have any sets of parallel sides. Can't be a trapezoid for the same reason. It can't be a rectangle because it doesn't have any right angles and it doesn't have any parallel sides, but it does have 4 sides and it is closed, so it's a quadrilateral. All right, moving right along. Let's take a look at this one. All right, checking for my angles. I don't see any right angles, but I do see parallel lines on the top and the bottom and parallel lines on the side. So this one can't be a rectangle because a rectangle has to have 4 right angles. Let's see, is it a quadrilateral? Why, yes it is, because it has 4 sides. So we can tick the box with quadrilateral. Is it a rhombus? Let's look back over here. Remember, a rhombus must have equal sides. So nope, it's not a rhombus. Is it a parallelogram? Yes, it is. It has 2 sets of parallel sides. So having this chart is super handy. All right. Next, let's take a look at this. It looks awfully familiar, I think. Let's check for angles and sides. Well, I've got parallel sides here and here and here and here. And I also see some right angles. Okie dokie. That means that this shape is a parallelogram because I have 2 sets of parallel sides. A rhombus, though, let's check that definition. Equal sides? Nope, can't be a rhombus. Is it a square? Is a rectangle a square? No. This is where it's funny. A rectangle is not a square, but a square is a rectangle. And I can see that from my chart because it almost looks like the rectangle can turn into a square. The square cannot turn into a rectangle. It can't go the other way. So it's not a square, but it is a rectangle because it has 4 right angles. All right, let's look again at number 6. Check for your side lengths, your angles. I see obtuse, obtuse, acute, acute. I see a set of parallel lines, just 1 set of parallel lines. And I can remember from my chart that a trapezoid has 1 set of parallel lines. So this is a trapezoid. It's also a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. If you notice that we keep checking that box quadrilateral a lot, every shape on this page is a quadrilateral. It's not a rhombus because, as we just talked about, a rhombus has to have equal sides. And is it a parallelogram? Well, let's check that definition. A parallelogram must have 2 pairs of parallel sides. So this one is a trapezoid and a quadrilateral. So it can be those 2 things. All right, number 7, let's identify sides. These are parallel and these are parallel. I see 4 right angles, but I also see that this shape is different from my rectangle. This one definitely has 4 equal sides, which makes it a square. Is it a rhombus? Let's look back over here. Well, a rhombus has to have 2 pairs of parallel sides. It has to be a parallelogram. This one has those 2 pairs. And it must have sides that are equal. This one does. This square is also a rhombus. And I can really see that clearly right here. That shows that a rhombus can be a square. I'm sorry, a square can be a rhombus. A rhombus, if it sits up straight, becomes a square. Is it a rectangle? Well, let's look and see. It sure is because it has 4 right angles and it has 2 pairs of parallel sides. And it is also a parallelogram because it has 2 pairs of parallel sides. So I get to check every single box right here on my square. All right, let's check one more. Do you see any right angles? Nope. Do you see any parallel sides? Let's see, this one's a little tricky. I'm gonna keep these going. Oh yes, look at that. These are parallel. Let me just draw those out again. These are parallel. All right, this is a shape that has two pairs of parallel sides, so I know it's not a trapezoid because a trapezoid just has one. It can't be a rhombus because a rhombus has to have, oh, wait a minute, can it? Let's look closely. Boy, this is where we have to be so specific. A rhombus has to have 4 equal sides. Let's check. Does it have 4 equal sides? It does. So this is a rhombus. Well, we already know it's a parallelogram, and it's not a square because remember, a square is a special kind of rhombus that's sitting up and has 4 right angles. So this one is only a rhombus and a parallelogram. Wow, we have to get really specific when we do this, don't we? We have to really think about the definitions of each type of quadrilateral. I want you to study these. I want you to play the game that's attached today. It's just a few questions that you can play, but really get yourself familiar with these because you're going to be doing this again when you are in 5th grade and again in 6th and 7th. You'll be finding the area of these type of shapes. So you're going to be seeing these for a long time. So definitely familiarize yourself with these names. And tomorrow we're going to come back and we're going to actually be creating them. All right, good job today.